The hallway shook with impact as the station's outer plating absorbed another round of kinetic fire. Sirens wailed in tight, rising loops, and the orange emergency lights painted everything in a nauseous glow. Erik Noll ducked under a dangling conduit and sprinted toward the med bay, cradling his right arm against his chest. He could barely feel it now, which wasn't a good sign. A Varendi medic intercepted him just outside the entrance. Its skin was a smooth blend of turquoise and ash, eyes narrow slits above a wide, flat face. A pack of medical tools jutted from the harness strapped across its chest. "Stop moving," it barked. "Sit down now." "I can't," Erik said. "There are still evacuees in the lower decks. I have to get them out. You were injured. You will compromise the mission." "I'm not dead." Erik tried to push past, but the Varendi blocked him, scanning his arm with a handheld device. It blinked red. "Your arm is broken," it shouted. "Fracture at the radius. Displacement detected." Erik flexed his fingers. They moved barely. His shoulder ached like hell, and the forearm felt like it had been jammed into a meat grinder, but he could move it. "It still works," he said, and kept moving down the corridor. The medic let out a frustrated screech, then followed at a distance, muttering in Varendi dialect. Erik ignored it. The lower decks were a maze of smoke, flickering lights, and panels blown clean off their housing. He climbed over a collapsed bulkhead and nearly lost his footing. Pain jabbed through his arm, and he had to grit his teeth to keep from dropping. A young crewman was trapped beneath a fallen beam near the mess hall. Erik slid down beside him. "Hey, you breathing?" The kid nodded, tears cutting trails through the soot on his face. "I can't feel my legs," he whispered. "Doesn't matter," Erik said. "We're getting out of here." He tried lifting the beam, but the pain in his arm flared so violently he almost blacked out. He slumped to the floor, breathing hard. "You're hurt," the kid said. "I've had worse," Erik lied. The Varendi medic caught up, scanning both of them. "His spine is compromised," it said, pointing at the crewman. "He cannot be moved without stabilization." "No time," Erik said. "The backup generator's running on fumes. When it dies, the oxygen scrubbers go down with it." He stood again, reeled, and leaned against the wall. "Help me lift it." "You cannot lift anything in your condition," the medic said. "Then you lift it and I'll pull him out." The Varendi hesitated, then moved to the beam. It gripped the metal with 4 clawed fingers and heaved. Erik dropped to his knees, ignoring the screech in his arm, and pulled the crewman out by his jacket. They both collapsed against the far wall. The medic lowered the beam and scanned Erik again. "You are worsening your condition. You will require surgical intervention." Later, Erik said, standing. Still breathing. The three of them made their way toward the emergency lift. The Varendi kept throwing glances at Erik, its expression unreadable. Inside the lift, Erik slumped against the wall, breathing shallow. The kid was losing consciousness, but stable. The medic applied a sedative and a neck brace. "Your humerus is also showing signs of stress," it said to Erik. "You will lose function if you continue." "You're really bad at pep talks," Erik muttered. "I am not here to motivate you. I am here to keep you alive. Then keep up." They reached the evac bay where a second team was already prepping shuttles. A dozen civilians huddled in survival gear, most still dazed. One of the evac officers saw Erik and ran up. "Lieutenant Noll, we've got structural instability in the access corridor. We need someone to crawl in and trigger the override from inside." "Where's Henders?" Erik asked. "Dead. Plasma burst got him." Erik nodded. "I'll do it." The Varendi stepped in front of him. "No, you will not." Erik didn't stop walking. "You got someone else who knows the manual override sequence?" "Didn't think so." The corridor was narrow and half flooded with coolant. Erik got down on his hands and knees, the cold biting into his skin, and crawled. Every movement sent pain ricocheting up his broken arm. He reached the control panel, keyed in the code, then flipped the switch. The lights above him flickered green. The evac hatch hissed open on the other side. When he emerged, he nearly collapsed. The medic caught him. "You are no longer functional," it said. "Yeah," Erik whispered. "I noticed." The Varendi sedated him this time. He didn't argue. He woke in the med bay with his arm immobilized in a full brace. The lights were softer here, white and blue, and the screaming outside had faded into a distant hum. "You are conscious," the medic said, standing over him. "Thanks for the update," Erik muttered. "You have a complete radial fracture with minor displacement. We realigned the bone and fitted a brace. You will need 6 to 8 weeks to heal. No lifting, no climbing, no combat." Erik didn't argue. He couldn't even sit up without help. The medic handed him a tablet. "Your actions saved 15 lives. However, you worsened your injury. You were warned." "I remember," Erik said. "I also remember the kid who couldn't walk. He's still breathing, right?" "Yes." "Then we did okay." The medic stared at him for a long moment. "You humans are reckless, illogical. You prioritize others even when your own systems are failing. You say that like it's a bad thing. It is dangerous. Maybe, but it works." The medic didn't respond. Over the next days, Erik remained in the med bay. He couldn't tie his boots with one hand, couldn't shower without help, and every time he shifted wrong, pain flared across his chest and shoulder. The Varendi checked on him twice a day, each time with the same blunt assessments. "You are healing within expected parameters," it said one morning as it scanned the arm. "You complain less than others." "I don't see how complaining helps," Erik said. "It does not, but it is common." That afternoon, Captain Relin visited. A tall woman with silver in her hair and boots that clicked too loud on the tile. "You're out of action for at least 7 weeks, she said. 6, Erik corrected. "If the bone sets clean, you're not going to push it." He didn't answer. She sighed. "I read the report. I'm putting you in for a commendation, but you're off the roster until the med team clears you." No arguments. I wasn't going to argue. Good, because I'd win. She left and Erik stared at the ceiling. The Varendi approached later with another scan device. "Your bone alignment is stable. The surrounding tissue is still inflamed." "I figured," Erik said. "Any chance I can start moving it soon?" "In 2 weeks. Light motion. No load bearing." Erik nodded. "Thanks." The Varendi paused. "You continued to function for over 2 hours with a fractured arm. That is uncommon." "I didn't have much choice." "There is always a choice. Not if you're the only one who knows how to open a hatch. That is not logic. That is instinct." "Maybe," Erik said, "but it got the job done." The Varendi watched him a moment longer, then turned away. By the 3rd week, Erik could move the arm in short, slow arcs. Pain still flared if he pushed too far, but the bone was healing. He spent time walking the med bay, flexing his fingers and rotating the wrist. The Varendi adjusted his brace weekly, each time with the same dispassionate efficiency. "You are ahead of schedule," it said in week 4. "But not by much. Do not overextend." "I won't." He didn't. He spent the next days moving carefully, rebuilding strength, and watching others train from the observation deck. He hated sitting still, but he wasn't reckless. Not anymore. 6 weeks in, the Varendi scanned him again and nodded. "You are cleared for light duty." Erik smiled. "You sure? No more broken bones hiding in there. None that we can detect." "I'll take it." He returned to his quarters that night, alone for the first time in weeks. He sat on the edge of the bed, rotating his wrist, fingers curling into a loose fist. It still ached, but it moved. The next morning, he passed the Varendi in the corridor. "Your arm," it said. "It still works." Erik grinned. "Yeah, it still works." The corridor outside docking bay 12 reeked of scorched insulation and chemical coolant. Erik's boots stuck slightly on the deck plating with every step. He paused at the junction, bracing his left hand against the wall to relieve pressure on the stiff joint of his right elbow. The brace had been replaced with a lighter cuff, but the dull heat inside the forearm didn't let him forget that the bone was still knitting. A maintenance bot zipped past, trailing a thin arc of welding sparks as it sealed a gash in the ceiling. Somewhere deeper in the station, a vent fan buzzed with a high-pitched irregularity that had to be driving someone insane by now. "Do you require assistance walking?" came that familiar, flat-toned voice behind him. Erik didn't turn. "Do I look like I need a walking buddy? You are favoring your right side. Displacement of weight distribution indicates discomfort. It's called limping. Humans do that when they're sore." The Varendi stepped up beside him, its gait smooth and bird-like, two long fingers tapping on a data slate with rhythmic irritation. Its skin had shifted slightly since the med bay, more pale streaks now, like someone had dragged chalk across sea glass. "You were not cleared for industrial zone activity," it said. "No one cleared me for anything. I'm inspecting damage to the shuttle clamps. If they're misaligned, it'll shear the next evac transport in half on launch. There are qualified engineers for this. Elias is still in cryo with a lung puncture, and Juno's stuck in pressure lockdown on deck 4. That leaves me." The Varendi's fingers paused mid-tap. "You are not an engineer. I was a field mechanic before I transferred to fleet ops. I know enough to spot a cracked anchor plate. Your qualifications have not been verified. I'm not here for verification. I'm here to keep the station from falling apart." Without waiting further, Erik ducked through the access hatch and descended the ladder into the crawlspace beneath the docking arms. The Varendi hesitated, then followed. The crawlspace was tight enough that Erik had to keep his injured arm angled across his chest to avoid bumping it. The lights flickered erratically, and somewhere above, the dock clamps let out a metallic groan as they settled under their own weight. "Careful here," Erik muttered, stepping over a warped strut. "That's a coolant duct. If it ruptures, I am aware of its function," the Varendi said. They reached the maintenance node. Erik crouched, using his good arm to unlatch the panel. Inside, the main anchor junction looked intact, but the stabilizer housing had shifted inward by at least 3 centimeters. "Damn," he muttered. "That's going to buckle under thrust." "You cannot repair structural elements with a single arm," the Varendi said. "I'm not here to fix it. I'm here to flag it before someone tries to dock another shuttle." He reached for the comm unit clipped to his belt, then hissed as a sharp jolt ran up his arm from the motion. The Varendi stepped forward, scanned him silently, then knelt and pulled the comm free, holding it out. "You will strain the ligaments if you use that limb again today." "Noted." Erik took the comm with his left hand and reported the misalignment to command. Once he clipped it back, he leaned against the bulkhead, breathing harder than he wanted to admit. "Do you possess an innate compulsion for self-injury?" the Varendi asked. "No, but I do have a compulsive need to not die when the floor gives out under me because nobody checked the bolts." The Varendi studied him for a long second. "Your physiology is inefficient, fragile, yet your species persists. Survival's not about perfection," Erik said. "It's about not giving up when things hurt." They climbed back out into the corridor. Erik's shirt clung damp with sweat and the muscles in his back felt like they were trying to seize. He didn't stop moving. An alert pinged from the overhead console. "Deck 9 internal fire suppression failure." Erik didn't hesitate. "You are not going to Deck 9, the Varendi said. "Someone has to manually reset the suppression relays or the whole deck will go up. You are not cleared for fire zones. You're welcome to come with me." Deck 9 stank of ozone and melted polymers. The hallway lights were out, replaced by the pulsing red of emergency strobes. Smoke curled in thin spirals from a ruptured conduit near the galley. Erik yanked the emergency rebreather from the wall and slipped it on. A technician lay unconscious near the fire relay junction, his clothes scorched at the edges. Erik dropped to one knee and checked his pulse, rapid, but steady. "He's breathing shallow," he said. The Varendi passed a small injector from its med harness and crouched beside the tech. "Thermal inhalation damage. Mild. He will recover. Then let's move him out of here." Together, they dragged the technician down the hall to the stairwell. Erik's arms screamed the entire way, but he didn't let go. Once the man was positioned safely outside the hazard zone, Erik turned back toward the relay. "You cannot be serious, unless you've got a better idea." The Varendi didn't try to stop him this time. Erik crawled into the relay chamber, heat pressing against his face like wet wool. The override panel was scorched and partially melted, but the manual lever remained intact. He reached up with his left hand, gritted his teeth, and yanked. The lever stuck halfway. He spat a curse and braced his shoulder against the frame, pushing harder. The steel groaned, then gave. The fire suppression system hissed as nozzles deployed overhead, releasing a flood of cold vapor. Erik stumbled back out into the corridor, coughing. His sleeve was soaked through and he felt like he'd been dipped in battery acid. "You are incapable of calculating risk appropriately," the Varendi said. "I calculate risk just fine," Erik replied, pulling off the rebreather. "I just don't like the odds when they involve doing nothing." Later that evening, he sat outside the infirmary, wrapped in a thermal blanket, his arm throbbing. The Varendi returned with a portable stim tray and knelt beside him. "You require analgesics? I thought I wasn't supposed to mask pain." "You are not supposed to ignore it entirely." Erik let the Varendi inject the dose into his upper shoulder. The relief was immediate, though it left a buzzing under his skin. "You're not wrong," Erik said. "I pushed too hard. It's not smart." The Varendi tilted its head. "Yet you persist. Because someone has to." The Varendi's gaze lingered on him, then away. "I have reviewed your personnel file. You were removed from your original post after an incident involving unauthorized intervention during a reactor breach." "Yeah. I pulled a senior officer out of a collapsing containment tunnel. Disobeyed a direct order to evacuate. He survived." "He did. You were demoted." Erik exhaled slowly. "You reading that as a failure?" "I am reading it as anomalous. Most species prioritize survival of command over personal loyalty." "Well," Erik said, "we're not most species." The Varendi stood. "You will remain under observation tonight. No arguments. And you will avoid all mechanical systems for 72 hours. That's pushing it." "It is a boundary, not a suggestion." As the Varendi turned to leave, Erik leaned back against the wall, eyes half closed. The corridor was quiet now, just the distant hum of station life resuming its rhythm. He could feel the tight pull of scar tissue forming along his arm, the slow itch of healing. He didn't move. He didn't need to. Not for now. The observation deck outside environmental control had a warped floor panel that creaked under Erik's boots. He didn't step around it. He liked the sound. It reminded him where he was and that he was still standing under his own weight. The Varendi medic, who had finally introduced itself as Ralos, stood behind him, arms folded behind its back, as narrowed in a way that meant it was thinking too hard about something. "You have been walking an unnecessary loop for 23 minutes, Ralos said. "It's not unnecessary if it keeps me from punching the wall. There are other methods of emotional regulation. None that involve this much gravity." The station had restored full artificial G3 days ago, and Erik had spent every morning since walking laps in areas that still smelled of fried circuit boards. Sweat clung to the back of his neck, and his right arm tingled every time he flexed the fingers. The bone had knitted, but the tendons were still catching up. He could lift a meal tray now, but anything heavier sent that familiar spike up to his shoulder. He stopped near the east viewport and leaned on the railing. Below, the twin moons of Arsenth drifted in lazy orbit, their surfaces pale and cracked like someone had tried to glue two eggshells together and failed. "Looks peaceful from up here," he said. "Deceptive," Ralos replied. "One of those moons has a magnetic anomaly that scrambles proximity sensors." "That'll do it." Erik rolled his shoulder carefully. "Any news on the evac transport?" "It departed safely at 0600. All 37 passengers accounted for. Guess that means we finally get to breathe." Ralos didn't reply. It approached, scanned Erik without asking, and flicked its eyes toward the damaged floor panel. "You should not place weight on a joint still undergoing synovial recovery. You just made that up." "I did not." Erik pushed off the rail and headed toward the lift. "Come on." "You owe me a coffee." "I do not owe you anything." "You do if you want me to sit still for more than 4 minutes." They reached the commissary during off-shift hours. which meant the only other occupants were two Girathi botanists arguing over fungal nutrient ratios and a maintenance drone idling near the ceiling. Erik ordered something resembling coffee, though it tasted like someone had boiled burnt toast and called it a beverage. Ralos didn't sit. "You don't eat. We metabolize differently. You're missing out." Erik sipped, winced, and set the cup down. "All right, maybe you aren't." Ralos tapped a finger on the table. "You have not filed your post-incident psychological evaluation. I've been a little busy not dying. It is mandatory. You're not my supervisor." "No," Ralos said, "but I am responsible for your physiological status. And you are attempting to compartmentalize trauma through overexertion." Erik leaned back in the chair. "If I was traumatized, I'd know. That is not how trauma functions." He met Ralos's gaze. "Let me guess. You scanned my cortisol levels. And your REM cycles. Both are irregular. I'm a human sleeping on a station that smells like melted plastic. You want me to dream about rainbows? You are avoiding rest. I'll rest when I stop smelling smoke in my hair." Ralos didn't press. It stood silently as Erik finished the last of the bitter drink and rubbed at his temple. "Fine," Erik said. "You want me to admit I'm not okay? I'm not. I'm tired. I have a constant ringing in my left ear, and every time someone shuts a bulkhead too fast I flinch like I'm back on deck 9. Ralos blinked slowly. "That is expected. I don't want it to be." They stood together in silence for a while, the hum of the station like a distant pressure against their ribs. Later that day, Erik returned to the lower maintenance shaft near the hydroponics wing. The hatch hadn't been resealed, yet no one wanted to go near it after the coolant leak. He climbed down, slower than before, testing the strength in his arm. No sharp pain, just a dull pull. That was new. He reached the base of the shaft and began inspecting the junction box. It had melted partially during the last power fluctuation, and the replacement unit floated half unboxed beside a broken crate. Erik knelt, peeled back the insulation, and began rewiring the harness. A voice echoed overhead. "You are not authorized to repair live junctions." "Not live," Erik said. "I bypassed the current upstream." Ralos dropped down beside him, landing with that unsettling quietness only Varendi had. "You should have waited. You hate waiting." "I am not recovering from bone trauma." Erik finished the last connection and sealed the panel. "Now you're just looking for reasons to scold me. I am attempting to prevent regression of your musculoskeletal recovery. Then maybe distract me. Tell me something weird about your homeworld." Ralos hesitated. "We do not possess a concept of home in the way you mean." "All right. Tell me something weird about the place you were manufactured or gestated or whatever." "There is a mountain range that hums at dusk. We believe it is the wind interacting with crystalline formations. It causes molting in our younger forms." Erik looked up. "You molt?" "Yes. It is not painful. Merely inconvenient." "How often?" "Every 3.2 cycles." He laughed. "And you think humans are weird?" "I have never said that aloud." "You don't have to." They exited the shaft as the lights flickered back to full brightness. A crew of engineers arrived moments later, visibly relieved to find the system operational. Erik nodded to them and stepped aside. In the corridor, Ralos paused. "You are improving. I'm not pushing it. You are still pushing it. But you are adapting." They walked in silence toward the med bay. The corridor was quiet now, no alarms, no smoke. Erik could almost hear his own footsteps. Inside, he sat on the edge of the diagnostic table. Ralos scanned his arm, tapped a few commands into the console, and adjusted the cuff. "You will regain full function in approximately 9 days. Guess I'm ahead of schedule again." "You are within tolerances." "Barely." Erik flexed the wrist. "Feels better than it did." "It is." He stood. "So, We done here. For now. Erik turned to go, then hesitated. You ever get tired of being right? No, he nodded. Didn't think so. That evening, Erik stepped onto the outer ring walkway just as the artificial dusk cycle began. The lights dimmed to a gentle amber, and the stars beyond the hull blinked in tight constellations. He walked without limping. No pain, no brace, just the low ache of a body remembering what it could do. He paused near the viewport. Behind him, footsteps. Not loud, not soft, familiar. You're following me now? I am observing. Erik didn't turn. I'm fine. You are healing. That's enough. Ralos stood beside him, arms folded, gaze fixed on the stars. You humans, it said, do not fear breaking. Only staying broken. That's not true. Ralos tilted its head. No, we don't fear staying broken. We just refuse to accept it. He exhaled. The stars didn't blink. The station didn't shake. His arm didn't hurt. They stood there a while longer. Neither spoke. There was nothing left to say.